Imagine a world where one man, barely out of his teens, could conquer the known world. Alexander the Great wasn't just a king. He was a legend in his own time, a military genius whose campaigns reshaped empires and whose name still echoes through millennia. Forget dusty textbooks and dry lectures. This is the full, immersive story of Alexander, told in a way that will guide you gently into a deep, restful sleep. We'll journey from his fiery youth and tutelage under Aristotle, through his legendary battles where he faced impossible odds with unmatched bravery, to the vast empire he forged and the mysteries of his untimely death. So dim the lights, settle in, and let the epic tale of Alexander the Great lull you into a peaceful slumber. The boy who would be king. Young Alexander, even as a boy, possessed a mind that sparkled with curiosity and a spirit that yearned for greatness. He wasn't content with mere games. His imagination painted grand battlefields and epic journeys across the vast lands he knew existed beyond his kingdom. He'd watch the sun dip below the horizon, not just seeing the end of a day, but picturing the distant shores it illuminated. This innate drive set him apart. His father, King Philip II of Macedon, a shrewd and ambitious ruler himself, recognized this fire in his son. Philip didn't just provide tutors, he curated experiences. He ensured Alexander was exposed to the best minds of the era. Imagine having the greatest philosopher, Aristotle, as your personal teacher. Alexander learned not just about warfare and politics, but about logic, ethics, and the natural world. Aristotle instilled in him a deep appreciation for knowledge, teaching him to question, to analyze, and to understand the why behind things. This wasn't like memorizing multiplication tables. It was about understanding the very fabric of existence. One famous tale illustrates Alexander's early brilliance and his daring nature. A magnificent, spirited horse named Bucephalus was brought to the Macedonian court, but no one could tame it. The beast was wild, untamed, and seemed destined for misery. While the seasoned horse trainers despaired, young Alexander observed. He noticed the horse was afraid of its own shadow. With a calm confidence that belied his years, he approached Bucephalus, turned him towards the sun so his shadow was behind him, and then, with gentle but firm hands, mounted the horse. Bucephalus, no longer frightened, responded to Alexander's touch, and they rode off together, a perfect partnership forged. This wasn't just about controlling an animal. It was about understanding its fears and using that understanding to build trust. It was a microcosm of the leadership he would later display on a global scale. This early mastery over Bucephalus was more than just a boy's triumph. It was a powerful symbol. It showed his ability to perceive what others missed, to approach challenges with a unique perspective, and to forge bonds through understanding rather than brute force. It foreshadowed the man who would lead armies, conquer empires, and leave an indelible mark on history. He wasn't just a prince. He was a boy with the heart and mind of a conqueror, already setting his sights on a destiny far grander than anyone could have imagined. Macedon's mighty machine. The Macedonian army was a finely tuned war machine, a marvel of military engineering for its time. Think of it like a perfectly assembled Lego set, where every brick, every soldier, had a specific purpose and fit precisely with the next. At its heart was the phalanx, a dense block of spearmen, each armed with a sarissa, a pike that could be 15 to 20 feet long. Imagine a forest of these giant spears, bristling and unyielding. When they marched, it was like a single, unstoppable entity, a walking wall that could crush anything in its path. It wasn't just about brute force, though. This was coordinated power. Beyond the phalanx, Alexander's army was a diverse collection of specialists. You had the companion cavalry, his elite horsemen, who acted like the army's shock troops. Picture them as the super-fast sports cars of the ancient world, able to break through enemy lines with a thunderous charge. Then there were the hypaspists, a more flexible infantry unit, good for flanking maneuvers or filling gaps. They were like the versatile multi-tools, ready for almost any job on the battlefield. Even the archers and slingers, though less glamorous, played a crucial role, softening up the enemy before the main assault. It was this combination, this mix and match of specialized units, that made the Macedonian army so formidable. The effectiveness of this mighty machine wasn't just about the weapons or the formations. It was also about the training and the leadership. Alexander himself was often at the forefront, a charismatic figure who inspired incredible loyalty. His soldiers trusted him, and that trust was built on a foundation of shared hardship and victory. They trained relentlessly, perfecting their drills until they moved as one organism. This wasn't a ragtag group of farmers thrown together. This was a professional fighting force, honed and sharpened by years of campaigns. It was like a championship sports team, where every player knows their role and executes it flawlessly, all under the guidance of a brilliant coach. This military system was designed for efficiency and overwhelming impact. It was adaptable, capable of fighting on different terrains and against various enemies. The Macedonians weren't just good at fighting, they were masters of logistics too, ensuring their troops were supplied and ready. They understood how to combine different types of soldiers, how to exploit weaknesses, and how to maintain momentum. It was a holistic approach to warfare, where every element worked in concert to achieve victory. This wasn't just an army, it was a well-oiled, unstoppable juggernaut. Philip II, the father of conquest. Philip II of Macedon, Alexander's father, was a true game-changer in the ancient world. Think of him as the ultimate military tinkerer, always looking for ways to make his army better. Before Philip, Greek warfare was a bit like a messy brawl, with phalanxes of hoplites clashing. Philip, however, was a master strategist and innovator. He took that basic idea and refined it into a precision instrument. One of his biggest breakthroughs was the sarissa, a ridiculously long pike, often 18 feet or more. Imagine trying to fight with a broomstick that long. It was a serious challenge for opponents. This wasn't just about having a bigger stick. It required incredible discipline and coordination. His soldiers had to march in step, move as one, and trust the guy next to them with their lives. It was a bit like a highly choreographed dance, but with swords and spears instead of ballet shoes. He also introduced professional soldiers, paying them regularly so they could focus solely on training and fighting. This was a big deal because, before that, armies were often made up of citizen soldiers who had to worry about their farms and businesses. Philip didn't just improve the army. He was a shrewd politician and diplomat too. He understood that conquest wasn't just about winning battles. It was about building alliances and keeping enemies divided. He used a mix of charm, bribery, and, when necessary, force to bring the fractious Greek city-states under his control. He was like a master chess player, always thinking several moves ahead, setting up his opponents for a fall. He even married strategically, taking wives from powerful families to secure his position and expand his influence. His ambition was immense. He dreamed of uniting Greece and then marching east to conquer the vast Persian Empire, a goal that had eluded others. He laid the groundwork for this grand vision, creating a powerful, unified kingdom and a formidable military machine. It was Philip's vision and his relentless drive that set the stage for his son Alexander's astonishing conquests. Without Philip's military reforms and political maneuvering, Alexander might have remained just another Macedonian prince, not the legend he became. He truly earned his title as the father of conquest. Aristotle's influence, a mind forged. Young Alexander, a prince with a restless spirit, found his mind being shaped not just by swords and strategy, but by the gentle, yet profound, guidance of Aristotle. This wasn't your average tutor, oh no? Aristotle was the rock-star philosopher of his day, a fellow who thought deeply about everything from how a plant grows to why people behave the way they do. He taught Alexander to question, to observe, and to look beyond the obvious. Think of it like this. Instead of just learning to swing a sword, Alexander learned why a certain swing was more effective or how the wind might affect an arrow's flight. Aristotle instilled a curiosity that went far beyond the battlefield. Aristotle's teachings were like a secret weapon for Alexander's brain. He learned about logic, which is basically a fancy word for thinking clearly and making sense. He studied ethics, understanding right from wrong, and politics, how to lead and govern people fairly. This wasn't just dry memorization. It was about understanding the world. Aristotle encouraged Alexander to explore different cultures and to respect their ways, a lesson that would serve him incredibly well as his empire grew. Imagine learning not just to conquer a city, but to understand its people and perhaps even make them allies. That's the kind of thinking Aristotle nurtured. This education wasn't about making Alexander a scholar who stayed in his library. Far from it. Aristotle's influence gave him a sharp intellect, a discerning eye, and a deep appreciation for knowledge. It meant that when Alexander faced a new challenge, he didn't just rely on brute force. He thought. He analyzed. He considered different perspectives. This intellectual toolkit, forged by Aristotle, was as crucial to his astonishing success as any phalanx of soldiers. It allowed him to adapt, to innovate, and to connect with the diverse peoples he encountered, making his empire more than just a collection of conquered lands, but a vibrant, interconnected world. The assassination and the ascension. The air in Babylon hung thick with an unnatural stillness, a stark contrast to the usual clamor of Alexander's court. He lay feverish, his body betraying him in ways no battlefield had ever managed. Whispers, like unseen serpents, slithered through the palace corridors. Was it a sudden illness, a betrayal, or something far more insidious? For days, the great conqueror wrestled with an unseen foe, his once vibrant mind clouded by delirium. His generals, men who had followed him across continents, now stood on the precipice of a power vacuum, their loyalty tested by the fading light of their king. The news of his death, when it finally broke, was met with stunned disbelief, then a wave of panic. Alexander, the almost divine leader, was gone. His vast empire, stretching from Greece to India, was now a prize waiting to be claimed. But claiming it wouldn't be easy. His generals, the diadochi, meaning successors, were a formidable bunch, each with their own ambition and a well-honed taste for power. They had fought alongside Alexander, bled with him, and now they eyed his kingdom with the same predatory gleam they once reserved for their enemies. The immediate aftermath was a chaotic scramble for control. Ptolemy, Seleucus, Antigonus, Cassander, and Lysimachus. These were the names that would soon carve up the known world. They initially agreed to rule jointly, a fragile truce born of shared history and a healthy dose of mutual suspicion. It was like a group of very ambitious children deciding to share a giant, incredibly valuable toy, but each secretly plotting how to get the biggest piece. This agreement was as stable as a house of cards in a hurricane. Soon, the inevitable happened. The fragile alliance shattered, replaced by a brutal series of wars. The diadochi turned on each other, their former camaraderie dissolving in a torrent of ambition and bloodshed. It was a brutal, protracted struggle for dominance, a testament to the intoxicating allure of absolute power. Each general fought to secure his own portion of Alexander's legacy, transforming his dream of a unified empire into a fragmented mosaic of warring kingdoms. The world Alexander had so painstakingly conquered was now a battleground for his own lieutenants, a tragic epilogue to a legendary life. The consolidation of power. Alexander's immediate concern after his father's assassination was not conquest, but control. He inherited a kingdom, Macedon, and an army poised for invasion, but he knew that a shaky foundation could crumble at any moment. Think of it like inheriting a busy restaurant. You've got the tables and the staff, but you need to make sure everyone knows who's in charge and what the menu is before you start serving. He had to prove he was more than just Philip's son. His first move was decisive and, frankly, a bit dramatic. He swiftly dealt with potential rivals, those ambitious nobles who might have seen his youth as an opportunity to seize power themselves. It wasn't a polite negotiation. It was more like a swift game of musical chairs where he made sure all the chairs were occupied by people loyal to him, and the others were, well, out of the running. This removed any immediate internal threats, securing his throne and allowing him to focus on the larger picture. Then came the matter of appeasing the Macedonian army. These were hardened warriors, fiercely loyal to Philip, and they needed to see Alexander as their new leader. He didn't shy away from them. He addressed them directly, reminding them of his father's legacy and his own ambitions, which conveniently aligned with theirs, the invasion of Persia. He showed them he was a man of action, not just words. It was like a star athlete stepping onto the field after a legendary coach retires. The team needs to see the new leader has the same fire and skill. Finally, he had to solidify his position with the Greek city-states, many of whom were wary of Macedonian dominance. They remembered Philip's strong hand. Alexander, however, played a different game. He didn't just march in and demand fealty. He reinforced the idea that the invasion of Persia was a pan-Hellenic cause, a shared mission against a common enemy. He offered assurances and demonstrated strength, making it clear that cooperation was in their best interest. It was a clever political maneuver, like a popular kid in school inviting everyone to a party, making them feel included and important, while still being the one who organized it. He ensured that when he finally set off for Asia, Macedon was united, the army was loyal, and the Greek allies were, at the very least, on board. The Persian Empire, a colossus awaits. The vast expanse of the Persian Empire loomed, a truly colossal entity that stretched across continents. Think of it like a supercontinent-spanning company, but with kings, armies, and a lot more gold. This empire, also known as the Achaemenid Empire, was a patchwork quilt of diverse peoples and lands, all united under a single, powerful ruler. From the dusty plains of Mesopotamia to the sun-baked coasts of Egypt, and all the way to the foothills of India, its influence was undeniable. It was the superpower of its time, a melting pot of cultures and resources that made it incredibly wealthy and formidable. Imagine an empire so large that it took months for messages to travel from one end to the other. To manage this sprawling domain, the Persians developed an incredible infrastructure. They built a network of well-maintained roads, the most famous being the Royal Road. This wasn't just any old path. It was like the ancient world superhighway, complete with inns and way stations every so often. Messengers could ride from one end to the other with remarkable speed, relaying information and orders. This efficient communication system was crucial for maintaining control over such a massive territory. It's a bit like having a super-fast internet connection back then, if you can picture that. The Persian Empire's wealth was legendary, fueled by tribute and trade from its many subject peoples. Every region contributed something unique, from precious metals mined in one area to fine textiles woven in another. This constant influx of goods and riches allowed the Persian kings to fund their massive armies, construct magnificent cities like Persepolis, and maintain their vast administrative system. Their tolerance for different cultures and religions also played a role in their success. Unlike some empires that forced their ways on conquered peoples, the Persians often allowed local customs and beliefs to flourish, which helped to keep the peace and prevent widespread rebellion. It was a pragmatic approach to empire building, recognizing that a happy subject was a more productive subject. This immense power and organization, however, also presented a challenge. The sheer size and complexity of the Persian Empire meant that it was a formidable opponent, a true titan that had stood for centuries. Its armies were vast, its resources seemingly endless, and its reach extended far and wide. To confront such a power required not just courage, but also a strategic brilliance that could match the empire's scale. It was a colossus, indeed, a force that would test the mettle of any who dared to challenge its dominance. The Granicus River, first blood. The dust swirled, kicked up by thousands of marching feet and the restless hooves of war horses. Alexander, young and brimming with a fire that would soon engulf empires, stood at the edge of the Granicus River. It wasn't a gentle stream you'd skip stones across. This was a swift, wide current, a formidable natural barrier. On the opposite bank, a formidable Persian force, commanded by seasoned generals, waited. They were a diverse army, a tapestry of peoples from across their vast empire, their armor glinting under the Anatolian sun. Imagine trying to cross a fast-flowing river while a bunch of people on the other side are actively trying to stop you. It's like trying to get to the best slice of pizza at a party when everyone else wants it too, and they've got a water balloon fight going on. Alexander didn't hesitate. He knew this crossing was more than just a tactical maneuver. It was a statement. It was the moment he had to prove himself, to his men, and to the world. He ordered his elite companion cavalry to prepare. These weren't just any horsemen. They were the shock troops, the tip of the spear. Their lances were long, their resolve even longer. The river churned, a muddy, swirling challenge. The air crackled with anticipation, a tense silence before the storm. The soldiers on both sides could feel it, the weight of history about to be written. With a mighty shout, Alexander led the charge. He plunged into the icy water, his horse fighting the current. Arrows rained down, spears were hurled. It was chaos, a maelstrom of water, steel, and desperate courage. Alexander himself was in the thick of it, a whirlwind of Macedonian fury. His helmet was struck, nearly splitting his head open, but he fought on, his vision narrowed to the immediate, brutal reality of the battle. He was like a determined kid trying to get across a slippery playground slide during a downpour, but with swords. It was a baptism by fire, or rather, by river and Persian steel. The crossing was brutal, a testament to the sheer will of the Macedonian army. They fought not just the river and the enemy, but also the fear that gnawed at the edges of their minds. Victory here would open the gateway into Asia Minor, a land ripe for conquest. Failure would mean disaster, a swift end to Alexander's audacious campaign before it had truly begun. But as the Macedonians surged onto the far bank, pushing back the surprised Persian defenders, it was clear that Alexander's gamble had paid off. This was the first taste of blood, the first major victory on his eastern campaign, and it tasted like destiny. Issus, the king against the king. The plains near Issus became a stage for an epic confrontation, a true clash of titans. Alexander, with his lightning-fast maneuvers, had cornered Darius III, the Persian king, who was leading a vast, diverse army. Imagine two chess grandmasters, but instead of pawns and knights, they had phalanxes of heavily armed soldiers and swift cavalry. Darius, finding himself trapped against the sea and mountains, had to fight or attempt a desperate escape. Alexander, ever the audacious leader, saw this as his moment. He personally led the charge of his companion cavalry, the elite shock troops of his army, aiming directly for Darius's position. It was a gamble, a bold move to decapitate the enemy command and sow chaos. The Persian line, though immense, lacked the cohesive training and discipline of Alexander's Macedonians. Darius, seeing Alexander's direct assault, made a critical decision. Instead of rallying his troops or leading a countercharge, he turned his chariot and fled. This single act, this flight of the king, had a devastating psychological effect on his army. The soldiers, seeing their leader abandon them, began to waver. It was like a wave of panic washing over the battlefield. Some units continued to fight valiantly, unaware of their king's departure, while others broke and ran, creating a domino effect of collapse. Alexander, relentlessly pursuing Darius, pushed his advantage. His soldiers, emboldened by their king's bravery and the enemy's disarray, fought with incredible ferocity. The battle wasn't just about brute force, it was a masterclass in tactical brilliance. Alexander understood that morale was as crucial as military might. By targeting Darius directly and forcing his flight, he effectively shattered the Persian army's will to resist. The ensuing rout was absolute, with thousands of Persian soldiers cut down as they tried to escape. This victory at Issus wasn't merely a conquest of territory. It was a profound psychological blow to the Persian Empire, demonstrating Alexander's superior leadership and the unstoppable momentum of his Macedonian forces. Gordian Knot, a legend unraveled. The tale of Alexander and the Gordian Knot is a classic. Imagine an ancient ox cart, its yoke tied with an incredibly intricate knot. Legend had it that whoever could untie this knot would become the ruler of Asia. Many had tried, pulling and prodding at the complex weave, but none succeeded. It was a puzzle of epic proportions, a true test of skill and patience. Alexander, arriving in the city of Gordium, was presented with this legendary challenge. He surveyed the knot, not with frustration, but with a glint in his eye. Instead of painstakingly trying to unravel each loop, a method most would employ for a tangled shoelace, he took a different approach. He saw the knot not as a puzzle to be solved through intricate manipulation, but as an obstacle to be overcome. With a swift, decisive movement, Alexander drew his sword. He didn't pick at the threads. He simply sliced through them, severing the knot in one bold stroke. It was a solution born of audacity and a unique perspective. This act wasn't just about cutting a rope, it was a symbolic declaration. It showed his willingness to break convention, to find a direct and powerful answer where others saw only complexity. It was like facing a mountain of paperwork and deciding to just file it all away, rather than trying to sort through each individual document. This legendary feat became a metaphor for Alexander's entire approach to conquest and problem-solving. He rarely got bogged down in the details. When faced with seemingly insurmountable challenges, he often found a direct, often aggressive, path forward. The Gordian knot wasn't just a legend. It was a preview of the unyielding resolve and innovative thinking that would define his extraordinary career. It demonstrated that sometimes the most effective solution isn't the most complicated one, but the one that boldly cuts through the problem. Siege of Tyre, a naval masterpiece. The island city of Tyre, a formidable Phoenician stronghold, presented Alexander with a challenge unlike any he had faced before. Surrounded by the shimmering Mediterranean, its walls rose directly from the sea, making a direct land assault seem utterly impossible. Think of it like trying to storm a castle that's floating on a giant, very angry duck. The Tyrians, confident in their watery defenses, mocked Alexander's arrival, believing their city was impregnable. They had a massive navy, and their harbor was like a private, heavily guarded swimming pool. Alexander, however, was not one to be deterred by a little water. He decided that if he couldn't walk to Tyre, he would build his way there. His solution was audacious: a mole, a massive causeway stretching from the mainland to the island. This wasn't just a quick plank. It was a colossal engineering project, involving thousands of laborers and a constant barrage of stones, earth, and timber. Imagine trying to build a road across a very deep, very busy swimming pool while people are throwing water balloons at you. The Tyrians, of course, fought back fiercely, launching fire ships and hurling projectiles from their city walls. Their goal was to make building the mole as miserable and dangerous as possible, like trying to assemble IKEA furniture during a hurricane. The construction of the mole was a brutal, back-and-forth affair. When the Macedonians built higher, the Tyrians would try to undermine it or set it ablaze. When the Macedonians used lighter materials, the Tyrians would overwhelm them with missiles. It was a test of endurance, ingenuity, and sheer stubbornness. Alexander brought in his own fleet, a collection of ships from his conquered territories, to protect the builders and engage the Tyrian navy. This naval battle was crucial. It wasn't just about sinking ships. It was about controlling the sea lanes, preventing reinforcements from reaching Tyre, and providing cover for the mole builders. Think of it as a giant game of chess, but with burning ships and cannonballs instead of pieces. Eventually, Alexander's persistence paid off. The mole, a testament to his unwavering determination, grew closer and closer to the island. He also devised clever siege engines, mounted on ships, that could batter the walls from the sea. These were like giant, floating catapults, hurling massive stones. The Tyrians, despite their bravery and the strategic advantage of their island, found themselves increasingly trapped. Their supply lines were cut, their walls were being battered, and the relentless pressure from Alexander's combined land and sea forces was simply too much. The siege became a masterclass in overcoming seemingly insurmountable obstacles through sheer will and innovative thinking, proving that even the most secure island can be conquered with the right approach and a lot of building materials. Egypt, the divine pharaoh. Alexander arrived in Egypt, a land steeped in ancient traditions and reverent of its rulers. He wasn't just a conqueror here. He was seen as a potential divine figure. The Egyptians had a long history of pharaohs who were considered living gods, mediators between the mortal world and the divine. Think of it like a king who was also seen as the ultimate CEO and the head priest, all rolled into one, but with the added bonus of being chosen by the gods themselves. Alexander, with his immense power and ambition, fit this narrative perfectly in their eyes. He traveled to the oasis of Siwa, a journey that was far from a casual road trip. This place was sacred, home to the oracle of Ammonius, a deity the Greeks recognized as their own Zeus. Visiting the oracle was a big deal, like getting a divine blessing from the universe's most powerful being. Alexander sought confirmation of his destiny, a divine endorsement for his grand plans. The whispers of the oracle's pronouncements, though debated by historians, fueled his belief in his own extraordinary fate, solidifying his image as more than just a mere mortal king. Following this spiritual pilgrimage, Alexander's vision for Egypt truly took shape. He decided to found a new city, a grand metropolis on the Mediterranean coast. This wasn't just any city. It was to be a beacon of Hellenistic culture and a vital hub for trade and learning. He envisioned a place where Greek and Egyptian influences could mingle, a cosmopolitan center that would rival any in the known world. The city, named Alexandria, would become a legendary center of knowledge, housing a library that would attract scholars from far and wide, a true testament to his foresight. His actions in Egypt were a masterful blend of military might and political shrewdness. By embracing Egyptian customs and presenting himself as a pharaoh, he secured the loyalty of his new subjects. He wasn't just a foreign general anymore. He was a legitimate ruler, accepted by the very people he now governed. This approach allowed him to consolidate his power, ensuring Egypt's resources and manpower were at his disposal for his future campaigns, making it a cornerstone of his vast empire. Founding of Alexandria, a city of light. Alexander the Great, a name synonymous with conquest and empire, also possessed a visionary streak that extended far beyond the battlefield. His founding of Alexandria in Egypt stands as a testament to this, a city conceived not just as a military outpost, but as a beacon of culture and commerce destined to shine for centuries. Imagine a vast, fertile delta where the mighty Nile River embraced the Mediterranean Sea. It was here, amidst this strategic and beautiful landscape, that Alexander envisioned a metropolis unlike any other. He wasn't just throwing down some tents. He was laying the groundwork for a truly grand urban center. The planning itself was meticulous, almost like sketching out a blueprint for a modern city, but on an ancient scale. Alexander, working with his brilliant architect Dinocrates of Rhodes, didn't just wing it. They surveyed the land, considering the prevailing winds for trade ships and the natural harbor for naval power. The city's layout was designed with wide, straight avenues, a stark contrast to the winding, chaotic streets of many older cities. Think of it like organizing a messy closet. Instead of just shoving things in, you create neat shelves and compartments. This organized approach made Alexandria easy to navigate and visually stunning. It was designed to impress, a place where people from all corners of the known world would feel welcome and inspired. Alexandria was envisioned as a nexus, a central hub where knowledge, trade, and diverse cultures would converge. Its strategic location made it a natural magnet for ships laden with goods from across the Mediterranean and beyond. Spices from the East, papyrus from Egypt, marble from Greece, all found their way to Alexandria's bustling port. But it wasn't just about the money. Alexander also fostered an environment for learning and intellectual pursuit. He understood that a thriving city needed more than just markets. It needed minds to engage and create. This forward-thinking approach laid the foundation for Alexandria to become one of the most important centers of learning in the ancient world, a true city of light in every sense of the word. Gaugamela, the decisive blow. The dust swirled, thick and choking, on the plains of Gaugamela. Alexander, astride his magnificent Bucephalus, surveyed the vast Persian army spread before him. It was a sea of men, a bewildering array of cavalry, scythed chariots, and infantry, all poised to crush the Macedonian phalanx. Darius III, the Persian king, had chosen this ground deliberately, a wide, flat expanse perfect for his superior numbers and his fearsome chariots. He wanted to trap Alexander, to break him against the sheer weight of his forces. Imagine a particularly stubborn traffic jam, but instead of cars, you have thousands of angry soldiers and pointy things. Alexander, however, was no stranger to audacious plans. He knew that simply meeting the Persian charge head-on would be a recipe for disaster. His strategy was a masterpiece of calculated risk. He extended his lines to the flanks, creating a gap, a seemingly fatal weakness. This wasn't an oversight, it was a lure. He was essentially saying, "Come on, try to surround us. We dare you." The Persian cavalry, eager to exploit this apparent vulnerability, began to move, fanning out to encircle the Macedonian army. It was a gambit that hinged on split-second timing and unwavering discipline. As the Persian cavalry committed to their flanking maneuver, Alexander saw his opportunity. He wheeled his companion cavalry, his elite shock troops, to the right. They didn't charge directly into the main Persian line. Instead, they struck at the gap that had opened between the Persian cavalry and their infantry. This was the decisive blow. It was like a perfectly executed karate chop to the opponent's weak spot, not the chest, but somewhere much more sensitive. The Persian cavalry, caught in the act of enveloping, found themselves attacked from the side, their formation breaking apart. Chaos erupted. The Macedonian phalanx, meanwhile, advanced steadily, their bristling spears a hedgehog of death. They held firm against the Persian infantry, preventing them from reinforcing their faltering cavalry. Alexander himself, at the heart of the storm, was a whirlwind of destruction. He personally led the charge into the Persian center, his eyes fixed on Darius. The Persian king, seeing his army unraveling in Alexander's relentless advance, lost his nerve. He turned and fled, his departure signaling the collapse of the entire Persian army. Gaugamela was not just a victory. It was the shattering of an empire, the moment Alexander truly became the great. The road to Persepolis. The air grew heavy with anticipation as Alexander's army marched eastward, the dust of 1,000 battles clinging to their worn sandals. Their sights were set on a prize that shimmered in the imagination of every soldier. Persepolis, the opulent capital of the Persian Empire. Imagine the grandest palace you've ever seen. Then multiply its splendor by 1,000, and you might begin to grasp the legendary wealth and beauty of this city. It was the heart of a vast empire, a place where kings had ruled for centuries, and now it was within Alexander's reach. The journey itself was a testament to their resilience, crossing rugged terrains and enduring scorching sun. Along this arduous path, supplies were a constant concern. Armies don't run on glory alone. They needed grain to feed the thousands of men and horses, water to quench their thirst, and the occasional luxury to lift spirits. Local towns and villages often provided what they could, sometimes willingly, sometimes under duress. Think of it like a modern-day road trip. You need to stop for gas and snacks. For Alexander's men, these stops were crucial for survival and for maintaining the momentum of their campaign. The logistics of feeding and watering such a massive force were a monumental undertaking, a testament to the organizational genius that kept the Macedonian war machine churning. The psychological impact of approaching Persepolis was profound. It wasn't just a city, it was a symbol. To conquer Persepolis was to strike a decisive blow against the Persian Empire, to claim its legacy and assert Macedonian dominance. The stories of its golden palaces, its vast treasuries filled with unimaginable riches, and its magnificent architecture fueled the soldiers' determination. Each step forward brought them closer to this ultimate prize, a tangible reward for their relentless campaigning and sacrifices. It was the culmination of years of fighting, a moment that would echo through history. Finally, the spires and walls of Persepolis began to appear on the horizon, a breathtaking sight after months of travel. The city stood proud, a testament to Persian power and artistry. For Alexander, it represented the ultimate conquest, the pinnacle of his ambition. The soldiers, weary but exhilarated, saw it as the end of their long journey and the beginning of their reward. The air buzzed with a mixture of awe and eagerness. This was it. The legendary city, the jewel of the East, lay before them, ready to be claimed. The burning of Persepolis, a controversial act. The destruction of Persepolis, the ceremonial capital of the Achaemenid Empire, remains one of the most debated events of Alexander the Great's Eastern campaign. Accounts from ancient historians paint a vivid, albeit conflicting, picture of the inferno that consumed its magnificent palaces and temples. It wasn't just a simple act of destruction, it was a symbolic obliteration, a statement of conquest so profound it echoed through millennia. Imagine a grand old library, filled with irreplaceable manuscripts, suddenly engulfed in flames. The loss of knowledge, art, and architectural marvels was immense, leaving historians to ponder the true motivations behind such a drastic measure. Some sources suggest a drunken rage, fueled by wine, and perhaps a desire to impress his Macedonian companions, led Alexander to order the torching of the city. The story goes that during a banquet, a woman named Thace, a courtesan, taunted Alexander, suggesting that destroying Persepolis would be a fitting revenge for the Persian invasion of Greece centuries earlier. This narrative presents Alexander as impulsive, swayed by emotion and revelry, rather than a calculating strategist. It's like someone regretting a rash decision made after one too many drinks at a party, a decision that caused irreparable damage. Conversely, other historians argue for a more deliberate, political motive. They proposed that the burning was a calculated act to dismantle the very heart of Persian imperial power, ensuring that the empire could not easily rise again. By destroying its symbolic center, Alexander aimed to break the spirit of resistance and solidify his own dominion. Think of it like taking down the main headquarters of a rival company. It's not just about winning the current battle, but about preventing them from regrouping and challenging you later. This interpretation paints Alexander as a strategic thinker, even if his methods were brutal. The archaeological evidence at Persepolis, with its layers of ash and charred remains, undeniably confirms the fire. However, pinpointing the exact cause and intent remains elusive. Was it a moment of unbridled passion and vengeance, or a cold, strategic move to cement his legacy? The debate continues, adding a layer of complexity to the already larger-than-life figure of Alexander the Great, forever marking the memory of Persepolis as a place of both unparalleled grandeur and devastating ruin. Central Asia, the unruly frontier. The lands Alexander pushed into after conquering Persia were unlike anything he'd encountered. Think of it like trying to herd cats, but the cats are nomadic tribes on horseback, and they don't particularly care for being herded. These were the regions we now call Central Asia, a vast, rugged expanse where empires often came to a grinding halt. Imagine endless steppes, towering mountains that make the Alps look like molehills, and deserts so dry they'd make your throat feel like sandpaper. This wasn't a place for grand cities and settled populations. It was home to hardy peoples, like the Sogdians and Bactrians, who were masters of survival and fiercely independent. Alexander found himself facing a different kind of warfare here. Instead of pitched battles with organized armies, he was dealing with guerrilla tactics. These warriors knew the land intimately. They could disappear into the mountains or melt away into the desert, striking quickly and then vanishing like smoke. It was frustrating, to say the least. Picture trying to chase someone who knows every hidden path and secret cave. You'd be exhausted and going in circles. This constant harassment, the raids on supply lines, and the sheer difficulty of maintaining control in such a wild territory wore down his troops and tested his legendary patience. One of the biggest challenges was simply holding on to these conquered lands. Unlike the more centralized Persian Empire, Central Asia was a patchwork of tribal confederations and city-states, many of which had their own leaders and allegiances. Alexander tried to impose his rule, founding cities named Alexandria and encouraging intermarriage with local elites to try and build a stable administration. It was a bit like trying to build a Lego castle on a trampoline. Things kept shifting and threatening to collapse. He had to constantly be on the move, putting down rebellions and securing his grip, which was a far cry from the swift victories he'd enjoyed in more established territories. The sheer scale of the place was also mind-boggling. This wasn't just a small province. It was a vast frontier that stretched for thousands of miles, with peoples and cultures that were largely unknown to the Greeks. It was a testament to Alexander's ambition that he even attempted to incorporate such a wild and untamed region into his empire. For his soldiers, it must have felt like the edge of the world, a place where the familiar faded away and the challenges were constant and unpredictable. The Sogdian Rock, a fortress falls. The formidable Sogdian Rock, a towering natural fortress, stood as a defiant symbol of resistance. Its sheer cliffs, practically unscalable, seemed to mock Alexander's ambitions. Imagine trying to climb a building with no windows, no doors, and walls slicker than a greased watermelon. That was the challenge. The defenders, confident in their impregnable perch, likely shared jokes and perhaps even a few wines, believing no army could ever reach them. They had good reason to feel secure. Alexander, however, was not one to be deterred by a little height or a lot of rock. He surveyed the immense cliff face, a look of grim determination on his face. His engineers, a resourceful bunch who probably spent their evenings tinkering with gadgets more complex than a modern-day drone, were tasked with a seemingly impossible mission: find a way up. They scouted the perimeter, their eyes scanning for any weakness, any ledge, any crack that could be exploited. It was like a treasure hunt, but the treasure was victory, and the map was the sheer rock face. After much searching, a breakthrough. A small group of daring Macedonian soldiers, known for their bravery and maybe a touch of recklessness, found a narrow, treacherous path. These weren't your average weekend hikers. These were men who had faced down armies and now faced down a mountain. They were the real-life action heroes of their time, armed with courage and, presumably, very good climbing shoes. They began their ascent, a slow, painstaking crawl up the unforgiving stone, each handhold and foothold a hard-won victory. As the Macedonians silently scaled the heights, the defenders above remained blissfully unaware. They probably thought the biggest threat was a rogue pigeon. Then, as dawn broke, a chilling sight greeted them. Alexander's soldiers emerging from the sky, like a surprise party nobody wanted. The fortress, once thought invincible, was breached. The Sogdians, stunned and perhaps a little embarrassed, realized their mountain had been conquered, not by brute force alone, but by ingenuity, perseverance, and a healthy dose of daring. It was a stark reminder that even the most solid-seeming defenses can be overcome with a clever plan and the right people to execute it. Bactria and the marriage of Roxana. The rugged, mountainous terrain of Bactria presented a formidable challenge to Alexander's armies. Imagine trying to march a whole troop of soldiers, complete with horses and supplies, through places where the paths are barely wide enough for a single goat. These were tough people, used to the harsh climate and difficult landscape, and they weren't about to roll over for any foreign conqueror. Alexander, ever the strategist, knew that brute force alone wouldn't win them over. He needed a different approach, something to cement his rule beyond just military might. This is where a touch of political theater and a rather significant wedding came into play. Amidst the dust and drama of Bactria, Alexander encountered Roxana, the daughter of a local nobleman. Now, she wasn't just any princess. She was renowned for her beauty, a fact that apparently struck Alexander like a lightning bolt. It wasn't just a fleeting crush, though. For Alexander, this was a strategic masterstroke. Marrying Roxana was a way to show the Bactrian people, and indeed all the peoples of his vast empire, that he wasn't just a conqueror who came and went. He was integrating, becoming part of their world. Think of it like a modern celebrity marrying into a prominent local family. It instantly changes perceptions and builds bridges. This union was more than just a personal alliance. It was a public declaration. Alexander, the Macedonian king, was now bound by marriage to a Bactrian noblewoman. This act sent a powerful message. He respected their culture and their leaders. It was a calculated move to foster loyalty and reduce the risk of further rebellions in this volatile region. It's a bit like when two rival companies decide to merge. It signals a new era of cooperation, or at least a truce, and often brings a lot of public attention. The wedding itself, held with much fanfare, was a symbol of this new, unified vision. Alexander even adopted some local customs, showing his willingness to adapt. This wasn't just about claiming territory. It was about building an empire that could last, one that was built on a foundation of understanding and, dare we say, a little bit of love mixed with shrewd diplomacy. Roxana, in turn, became a significant figure, a queen who represented the fusion of two worlds, a testament to Alexander's ambition extending far beyond the battlefield. The mutiny at the Hyphasis, limits of ambition. The army, weary and far from home, stood at the Hyphasis River. Think of it like a team that's been playing a grueling game for hours, maybe even days, and suddenly they're told they have to run another marathon. They'd already conquered vast lands, seen things most people only dream of, and fought battles that echo through the ages. But this river, this particular point on the map, felt like the end of the line for many. The soldiers, loyal for so long, had reached their breaking point. Their armor felt heavier, their swords duller, and the idea of pushing further into unknown territories, towards even greater challenges, seemed less like glory and more like a death sentence. They had marched across deserts that would make a camel sweat, crossed mountains that scraped the sky, and endured climates that swung from scorching heat to freezing cold. Their families, their homes, were a distant memory, a whisper on the wind. The promises of riches and fame that had once fueled their march now rang hollow. Imagine promising your kids endless candy, but after they've eaten their weight in chocolate, you tell them there's a whole new candy store across a dangerous, uncharted jungle. They started grumbling, then talking, and finally, they made their feelings known. It wasn't a sudden outburst. but a slow burn of discontent that finally ignited. Alexander, ever the ambitious leader, wanted to press on. He saw the hyphasis not as a boundary, but as just another obstacle. He envisioned his empire stretching even further, his name etched into even more distant lands. But his men saw it differently. They saw the wisdom in stopping, in consolidating their gains, in finally turning back towards the familiar embrace of home. Their courage, though immense, had limits. Their loyalty, though tested, was not infinite. This wasn't cowardice. It was the sensible, human desire for rest and return after an extraordinary, exhausting journey. It was a stark reminder that even the greatest leaders must listen to the pulse of their people, especially when that pulse is a desperate plea to simply go home. The journey through the Gadrosian Desert. The relentless sun beat down, a fiery hammer forging the sand into an endless, shimmering sea. Alexander's army, hardened by countless battles, found themselves facing a foe far more insidious than any Persian phalanx, the Gadrosian Desert. This was no ordinary wasteland. It was a crucible, a place that seemed designed to strip away everything: hope, strength, even the very will to live. Imagine trying to walk across a giant, heated griddle, with no shade, no water, and the air itself feeling like a furnace blast. That's what it was like, day after punishing day. The soldiers, accustomed to the bounty of conquered lands, now faced a stark reality. Their elaborate baggage trains, filled with spoils of war and comforts of civilization, became a cruel mockery. Food dwindled, water skins grew lighter with each agonizing sip, and the once proud Macedonian soldiers began to look like shadows of their former selves. They were like a marathon runner, miles from the finish line, with their water bottle nearly empty and their muscles screaming. The sand, fine as dust, coated everything, a gritty testament to their Sisyphean struggle. One of the most terrifying aspects of this ordeal was the mirage. The desert, in its cruel ingenuity, would conjure visions of cool lakes and lush oases, only to snatch them away as the weary soldiers approached. It was a psychological torment, a constant taunt to their parched throats and aching bodies. They saw water, they felt its coolness, and then, with a sickening lurch, it dissolved into the heat haze. This was like seeing a delicious meal right in front of you, only to have it vanish before you could take a bite. The psychological toll was immense, chipping away at their resolve with every deceptive shimmer. Yet, amidst this desolation, the leadership of Alexander shone through, albeit in a desperate manner. He shared in their suffering, his own thirst and hunger a mirror to theirs. He pushed forward, a beacon of grim determination, even when the very ground seemed to conspire against them. This wasn't about grand strategy anymore. It was about sheer, unadulterated survival, a testament to the human spirit's capacity to endure when pushed to its absolute limit. It was like a captain of a sinking ship, not just ordering his crew to bail, but grabbing a bucket himself, his face grim but resolute. India, a new world of wonders. The Indus River Valley presented Alexander with a landscape utterly unlike anything he had encountered before. The air was thick with the scent of spices, a heady perfume of cardamom, cinnamon, and something he couldn't quite place, a sweet, earthy aroma that clung to the humid air. Vast plains stretched out, dotted with vibrant green fields of rice and wheat, a stark contrast to the dusty terrains he'd grown accustomed to. He saw strange animals, creatures with long trunks that could pick up a single grain of rice with astonishing delicacy, and others with magnificent, curving horns that seemed to gleam in the sun. The people, too, were different. Their clothing was made of light, airy fabrics, often dyed in brilliant hues of saffron, indigo, and crimson, a riot of color against the verdant backdrop. Their music, when he heard it, was a complex tapestry of sounds, featuring instruments he'd never seen before, producing melodies that were both haunting and joyful. One of the most striking marvels was the sheer ingenuity of their irrigation systems. Water, so vital in this land, was channeled through an intricate network of canals, feeding the thirsty crops and sustaining the bustling cities. He marveled at the way they managed the powerful Indus, a river that could swell with a terrifying force, yet they had learned to harness its bounty. The cities themselves were a testament to their advanced civilization. Buildings rose several stories high, constructed from fired bricks, a material that seemed to resist the relentless sun. Markets teemed with an astonishing array of goods, silks that shimmered like liquid moonlight, precious stones that flashed with inner fire, and exotic fruits, some so sweet they made his eyes water, others so tart they made him pucker. The sheer variety was overwhelming, a cornucopia of sensory experiences. He witnessed skilled artisans at work, their hands moving with a practiced grace that spoke of generations of inherited knowledge. Potters shaped clay into elegant vessels on spinning wheels, their creations destined for both utility and beauty. Metalworkers forged intricate jewelry and weapons, their hammers ringing out a rhythmic beat that echoed through the workshops. Even the way they prepared their food was a spectacle, a complex dance of spices and herbs, transforming simple ingredients into dishes of incredible flavor and aroma. He tasted curries, rich and complex, with a heat that built slowly, warming him from the inside out. He saw people practicing yoga, a discipline of body and mind that seemed to bring a profound sense of peace and control, a concept utterly foreign to his own warrior culture. The sheer scale of the natural world here was also a source of wonder. Towering mountains, the Himalayas, loomed in the distance, their peaks shrouded in mist, hinting at secrets yet undiscovered. Lush forests, teeming with life, offered a different kind of beauty, a wild, untamed grandeur. He encountered elephants, majestic beasts that commanded respect and awe, their sheer size and power a humbling sight. The diversity of life, from the smallest insect to the largest mammal, was astounding, a vibrant ecosystem that pulsed with energy. This land, with its rich traditions, its innovative spirit, and its breathtaking natural beauty, was indeed a new world, a place that challenged his understanding and expanded his horizons in ways he could never have anticipated. The Battle of the Hydaspes, Porus's stand. The river Hydaspes, swollen with monsoon rains, presented a formidable barrier. Alexander, ever the strategist, had spent days feigning attempts to cross, only to retreat, a tactic akin to a child repeatedly poking a sleeping bear. He knew Porus, the Indian king, was waiting, his army a bristling hedge of spears, and, most notably, were elephants. These weren't your circus elephants. Imagine a tank, but with a trunk and a very bad temper. Porus had positioned his forces strategically, using the river as a natural moat. Alexander's men, seasoned veterans of countless campaigns, felt the unease. They were accustomed to overcoming human foes, but the sheer scale and power of the elephants were a different beast entirely, like facing a battalion of furry, rampaging bulldozers. Alexander's solution was audacious, bordering on lunacy. Under the cover of a stormy night, he led a significant portion of his army several miles upstream, a daring maneuver that would make any modern-day logistics manager sweat. The crossing itself was treacherous, the current threatening to swallow men and horses whole. Meanwhile, a smaller contingent remained at the original crossing point, keeping Porus's main force occupied, a brilliant diversionary tactic. It's like planning a surprise birthday party. You need someone to distract the guest of honor while the real preparations happen elsewhere. The element of surprise was Alexander's greatest weapon, and he wielded it with the precision of a surgeon. When Alexander's troops finally landed on the opposite bank, Porus was forced to divide his army. He sent his cavalry to intercept the invaders, but Alexander's Macedonian horsemen, renowned for their discipline and ferocity, were more than a match. The real challenge came with the elephants. These massive creatures, when startled or wounded, could be as dangerous to their own side as to the enemy. The Macedonian phalanx, a tight formation of soldiers with long pikes, was designed to withstand cavalry charges, but elephants were another matter. Picture a brick wall trying to stop a runaway train. That was the initial feeling. As the battle raged, the ground turned into a muddy, chaotic mess. Arrows flew, swords clashed, and the trumpeting of elephants echoed across the battlefield, a terrifying sound that could curdle the blood. Porus himself, a giant of a man, rode atop his mightiest elephant, fighting with the courage of a lion. He was a formidable opponent, a king defending his homeland with every fiber of his being. Alexander, ever the showman, was in the thick of it, rallying his troops. The battle was a brutal dance of death and determination, a testament to the raw power of human will against both man and beast. The outcome hung precariously in the balance, a true test of Alexander's genius and his army's endurance. The return journey, exhaustion and triumph. The dust of the Indian subcontinent clung to Alexander's army like a second skin, a gritty testament to their relentless march. Months of campaigning had worn down even the most seasoned warriors. Their armor, once gleaming, was now dented and scarred, their tunics frayed. The once vibrant banners, symbols of their conquering spirit, drooped with weariness. Imagine a marathon runner, the finish line in sight, but instead of cheers, they hear the distant rumble of more miles to cover. That was the mood. Every step was heavy, a deliberate effort against the pull of exhaustion. Yet, amidst this profound fatigue, a strange sort of triumph began to bloom. They had pushed further east than any European army before, encountered peoples and lands previously only whispered about in myths. Alexander, though as weary as his men, carried a fire that refused to be extinguished. He would ride ahead, his presence a beacon, his voice a rallying cry that, even in a whisper, could stir the deepest reserves of strength. It was the triumph of sheer will, of having stared down the impossible and, in many ways, conquered it. Think of a musician who, after a grueling rehearsal, knows they've finally nailed that impossibly difficult passage, that quiet satisfaction. The journey back was not a simple retreat. It was a strategic withdrawal, a carefully orchestrated movement to preserve the hard-won gains. They faced not only the internal battle against fatigue, but also the external challenges of unfamiliar terrain and the lingering threat of hostile tribes. Supplies dwindled, and the psychological toll of constant vigilance weighed heavily. It was a test of leadership, where Alexander's ability to inspire and strategize was paramount. He had to be the rock, the unwavering force, when his men felt like crumbling sand. But as they neared the familiar borders of their empire, a different feeling settled in. The weariness remained, a constant ache in their bones, but it was now overlaid with the profound satisfaction of survival and accomplishment. They had faced the unknown, endured hardship that would have broken lesser men, and emerged, battered but unbroken. This was not just Alexander's triumph. It was the triumph of every single soldier who had marched beside him, who had bled and sweat and dreamed of home. It was the silent acknowledgement of their shared ordeal and their collective victory over the vastness of the world. The assassination of Antipater. The whispers began subtly, like a draft under a poorly sealed door. Antipater, the trusted regent of Macedon, a man who had held the reins of power with an iron fist, found himself the subject of increasingly venomous gossip. It wasn't a sudden betrayal, more like a slow leak of trust that eventually flooded the palace halls. Some said it was Cassander, Antipater's own son, a man with a restless ambition that chafed under his father's authority. Others pointed to the powerful generals who had served Alexander, men who felt their own claims to influence were being sidelined by Antipater's firm grip. Imagine a village elder, respected and feared, suddenly finding his pronouncements questioned by his own children and the younger generation. This was the atmosphere surrounding Antipater. He had been a loyal servant to Alexander, a vital pillar in the vast empire, but with Alexander gone, his position became precarious. He had secured the regency, a monumental achievement, but securing loyalty was a different, far more slippery beast. The seeds of discontent, once sown, found fertile ground in the power vacuum left by the departed conqueror. The actual removal of Antipater wasn't a grand, public execution. It was far more insidious, a quiet poisoning. The details are murky, as they often are when powerful figures meet untimely ends. Was it a slow-acting poison, added incrementally to his wine or food over weeks, making him weaker and weaker until he simply faded away? Or a swift, potent dose, a sudden betrayal that left no time for recovery? The prevailing theory points to Cassander, his son, as the architect of this dark deed. Perhaps he saw his father as an obstacle, a relic of a past era, hindering his own ascent. It's a story as old as time, the son eager to inherit the father's mantle, sometimes a little too eagerly. This act, whether directly orchestrated by Cassander or by those who supported him, marked a significant shift. Antipater's death wasn't just the end of one man's life. It was the removal of a major player from the complex Game of Thrones that followed Alexander's death. It cleared the path for Cassander to assert his own authority, albeit a contested one, and further destabilized the already fractured empire. The man who had once held so much power, who had been instrumental in shaping the post-Alexander world, was ultimately undone not by a foreign enemy, but by the machinations within his own circle. The death of Alexander, a mystery, unfolds. The great conqueror, Alexander, lay dying in Babylon. It was the year 323 before Christ, a time when medicine was more guesswork than science, and the world was a much smaller, more mysterious place. His once vibrant body, accustomed to the rigors of battle and endless campaigns, was succumbing to an unknown ailment. Whispers began to circulate, as they often do when a powerful figure is in distress. Was it poison? A curse? Or simply the toll of a life lived at breakneck speed? The symptoms were baffling. Fever raged, his strength ebbed away, and he reportedly lost the ability to speak, communicating only through gestures. Imagine a king, a man who commanded armies and reshaped empires, now utterly dependent on others, his voice silenced. Physicians, both Greek and Babylonian, were summoned, their knowledge limited to bleeding, poultices, and prayers. They tried everything they knew, but nothing seemed to break the fever's grip or restore Alexander's vigor. It was like trying to put out a wildfire with a teacup. Suspicion naturally fell on those closest to him. In the cutthroat world of ancient power, betrayal was a constant companion. His generals, many of whom had fought alongside him for years, were vying for influence and, perhaps, for his throne. Could one of them, impatient for power or fearing Alexander's next move, have orchestrated his demise? The lack of clear evidence, the swirling rumors, and the sheer shock of losing such a monumental figure fueled endless speculation that continues to this day. The mystery of Alexander's death isn't just about who might have done it. It's also about the unknown nature of his illness. Theories abound, ranging from malaria and typhoid fever to poisoning from contaminated wine, or even a rare neurological disorder. Without the sophisticated diagnostic tools we have today, pinpointing the exact cause was impossible. His body, once a symbol of invincibility, became a puzzle, its final chapter shrouded in the fog of ancient uncertainty. The Diadochi, the empire divided. The death of Alexander the Great, a man who had conquered vast swathes of the known world, left a colossal void. His empire, stretching from Greece to India, was like a magnificent, freshly baked cake, but with no one designated to slice it. This led to a chaotic scramble, a sort of posthumous inheritance dispute among his most trusted generals, known as the Diadochi, meaning successors. These were not just any soldiers. They were seasoned commanders, men who had bled and fought alongside Alexander, each believing they had a claim to a piece of his grand legacy. Think of it like a group of friends who all pitched in to buy a really expensive video game, and then the main player suddenly disappears. Suddenly, everyone's looking at each other, wondering who gets to hold the controller and, more importantly, who gets to keep the game. This period became a brutal, multi-generational struggle for control. The initial plan, a rather optimistic one, was to rule jointly. Craterus, Ptolemy, Seleucus, Antigonus, and Antipater were among the key players, each carving out regions for themselves. It was akin to a group of business partners whose CEO suddenly retires without naming a successor. They tried to keep the company afloat, but soon disagreements flared up. Who gets the prime office space? Who controls the marketing budget? These weren't just minor squabbles. These were battles for power, fought with armies and political maneuvering. Territories were constantly shifting. Alliances were made and broken faster than you can say treachery, and the dream of a unified Hellenistic empire began to crumble. The Diadochi Wars were not for the faint of heart. They involved betrayals, assassinations, and pitched battles. For instance, Ptolemy, a shrewd and ambitious general, managed to secure Egypt, transforming it into a wealthy and stable kingdom that would last for centuries, ruled by his descendants, the famous Ptolemaic dynasty that even Cleopatra belonged to. Seleucus, on the other hand, ended up with a massive swathe of Asia, founding the Seleucid Empire, which stretched from the Mediterranean to parts of India. Imagine trying to divide a giant pizza among friends, but instead of just cutting it, everyone starts fighting over the toppings, then the crust, and eventually, the whole pizza gets knocked on the floor. Antigonus, perhaps the most aggressive of the Diadochi, tried to reconquer the whole empire for himself, leading to a massive coalition forming against him. His defeat and death at the Battle of Ipsus effectively cemented the division of Alexander's empire into several successor kingdoms. These kingdoms, while no longer unified under one banner, spread Greek culture, language, and governance far and wide, creating a new Hellenistic world. It was like a massive, multi-stage rock concert that was supposed to have one headliner, but the headliner cancels last minute. So, all the opening acts end up playing their own separate, but still impressive, sets in different venues, and each one becomes a huge success in its own right, influencing music for years to come. Legacy, a world transformed. Alexander's conquests did more than just redraw maps. They fundamentally reshaped the world. He didn't just conquer places, he linked them. Think of it like a superhighway system being built across continents. But instead of cars, it was ideas, languages, and culture that traveled. Greek became the lingua franca, the common language, from Greece all the way to India. This was like everyone suddenly agreeing to speak English for international business today, making trade and communication so much easier. Cities bearing his name, like Alexandria in Egypt, weren't just military outposts. They became vibrant centers of learning and commerce. Imagine a bustling marketplace where you could buy spices from the East, pottery from Greece, and maybe even hear philosophers debating in Greek. Alexandria, in particular, became a beacon of knowledge, housing a famous library that collected scrolls from all over the known world. It was the ancient equivalent of a massive university and a global research hub rolled into one. This cultural fusion, known as Hellenism, was Alexander's unexpected masterpiece. He encouraged his soldiers to marry local women, and he himself set an example. This wasn't just about population growth, it was about blending traditions. So, you'd find Greek art influencing Indian sculpture, or Egyptian religious ideas finding their way into Greek thought. It was a grand experiment in multiculturalism, showing that different peoples could learn from and enrich each other. It's a bit like how different cuisines blend in modern cities, creating exciting new flavors. The impact of this Hellenistic world lasted for centuries. Even after his empire fractured, the cultural and linguistic connections he forged remained strong. This shared heritage made future empires, like the Roman Empire, much easier to manage and integrate. It laid the groundwork for a more interconnected world, a concept we still strive for today. So, while Alexander might have been a brilliant general, his true, lasting legacy was in building bridges between peoples and cultures, creating a world that was, in many ways, far more united than it had ever been before. Cultural diffusion, the Hellenistic Age. Alexander's conquests weren't just about drawing new borders on a map. They were like throwing a giant, ancient party where everyone brought something to the table. Suddenly, Greek ideas, art, and even the way people spoke started showing up in places like Egypt and Persia. Think of it like your favorite band suddenly collaborating with a musician from a completely different genre. You get something new and exciting. Greek architects designed grand buildings, but they often incorporated local styles, so you'd see a Greek column topped with Egyptian carvings or Persian decorative motifs woven into Greek mosaics. It was a beautiful mashup. This mingling wasn't just for show. Greek became the common language for educated people and traders across this vast new territory, kind of like how English is used for international business today. This made communication and trade much easier, allowing ideas to spread like wildfire. Philosophers debated in Greek, scientists shared discoveries in Greek, and even everyday folks picked up a few Greek phrases to haggle at the market. It was a period of incredible intellectual and artistic cross-pollination. Imagine a bustling marketplace where you could hear a dozen languages, but everyone understood the main announcements and the prices because of this shared Greek connection. This cultural blend wasn't a one-way street, either. While Greek culture definitely made a big splash, it also absorbed influences from the places it encountered. Egyptian religious ideas found their way into Greek thinking, and Persian courtly customs were adopted by Greek rulers. It was a true fusion, creating a vibrant Hellenistic world that was more than just the sum of its parts. This era saw the birth of new forms of art and literature that combined different traditions, leading to a rich tapestry of creativity that influenced civilizations for centuries to come. It was like a recipe where adding a pinch of this and a dash of that created a brand new, delicious flavor. Alexander's enduring myth. Alexander the Great's legend didn't fade with his death. It exploded, becoming a potent myth that has echoed through centuries. Think of it like a really good story that everyone keeps telling, adding little bits here and there, but the core magic stays the same. This myth wasn't just about his military victories, though those were pretty epic. It was about his charisma, his ambition, and this almost supernatural aura that surrounded him. People looked at him and saw more than just a king. They saw a demigod, a hero who could conquer the impossible. This enduring image fueled countless tales, poems, and even art. For instance, medieval knights, who were basically the superheroes of their day, saw Alexander as their ultimate role model. They'd read stories about his bravery and imagined themselves performing similar feats of valor on the battlefield, perhaps even wearing armor inspired by what they imagined he wore. It was like a cosmic endorsement for their own quests for glory and honor. His name became synonymous with unparalleled success and daring. The myth also played a significant role in shaping the identity of various cultures. Rulers from Persia to Rome, and even later in Europe, would invoke Alexander's name to legitimize their own power and ambitions. It was a way of saying, first him, not just a ruler, first him, the next Alexander, hoping to borrow some of his legendary prestige. This is a bit like how a modern athlete might be compared to a legendary champion. It's a way of elevating their status and connecting them to a legacy of greatness. It shows how powerful stories and symbols can be, transcending time and geography. Even today, the myth persists. While we have more historical facts available, the romanticized image of Alexander as the ultimate conqueror, the brilliant strategist, and the man who seemed to bend the world to his will, continues to capture the imagination. It's a testament to the power of a compelling narrative. His story, embellished and transformed over millennia, serves as a powerful reminder of how human beings are drawn to tales of extraordinary individuals who push the boundaries of what is possible, leaving behind a legacy that feels larger than life. And so, Alexander's lightning campaigns reshaped the world, leaving a legacy that echoed through empires long after his own faded. From conquering Persia to reaching the edges of India, he was a master strategist, a charismatic leader, and a force of nature. He spread Greek culture, the very ideas of art, philosophy, and governance, like seeds across a vast new landscape. Think of it like a really popular new recipe spreading like wildfire. Suddenly, everyone's making moussaka. He showed us that with ambition and a bit of daring, even the impossible can be achieved. Now, as you drift off to sleep, let the image of his triumphant return, his vast empire stretching from Greece to the Indus, settle gently in your mind. Remember the battles, the triumphs, and the sheer audacity of the man. We hope this journey through Alexander's extraordinary life has been a peaceful one for you. If you found yourself captivated by the rise and fall of ancient powers, then you might be interested in our next episode, where we'll explore the fascinating world of Cleopatra, the queen who dazzled Rome. Until then, sleep well, and may your dreams be as epic as Alexander's conquests.